Welcome to Pittsburgh Earth Day's Ecolution Rewind. Here is your host, Natalie Bencivenga.
Welcome to Pittsburgh Earth Day's Ecolution Rewind. Hi, I'm your host, Natalie Bencivenga. As you all know, COVID has had a major impact on all live events this past year. Ecolution 2020 was originally scheduled for this past April, and then it was postponed until October, and finally it's been replaced with this virtual look back on the event since its inception in 2016. So welcome to Ecolution Rewind. Joining me is Richard Parsakian, the owner of the vintage clothing store Eon's Fashion Antique in Shadyside, celebrating 35 years in business. His store is a resource for film, television, theater, dance, local artists, and performers. He is an installation artist, costume and event designer, and has a Bachelor of Architecture from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and sits on the City Art Commission, the Greater Pittsburgh Art Council, the Pittsburgh Dance Council Advisory Board, and the Mayor's LGBTQIA+ Advisory Council. He's very, very busy. And I'd also like to welcome Emilio Cornacchione, whose last name I always love to pronounce, who, along with Gino Chiodo, founded Izazu Salons and Hair Care Products. The duo's dedication and enthusiasm has remained steadfast from their tenure as highly respected educators with world-renowned hair product companies to features on both national and international television, including TLC, Fox, American Store, HSN, and Ideal World in London. Their latest venture is their own Izazu-branded hair care products developed based on the specific needs of clients' hairstyling challenges while helping them recreate their salon look at home. And I'm wearing some of their products today, so you gotta love that. And they're also available at their salons and at Giant Eagle Market Districts. It is so great to be with both of you. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So I understand that your involvement with Ecolution, Richard, has been since its inception, since the beginning. So tell me how you got to be involved with Ecolution and why you are so committed to it.
Well, Ecolution is one of the many live events that is put on by Pittsburgh Earth Day. It was a concept of Rhonda Zigarelli, who initially approached me with the idea in 2015. I've been very involved in this type of event and philosophy all my life. When I was going to college at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for Architecture, I was very involved in the very first Earth Day. That was a national event. The very first idea was to bring together politics and art in one full week of events. I was very involved in putting an exhibit on at our building, which is called the Green Building at our school, the architecture school. We had our own building in the middle of this engineering school. Think of Carnegie Mellon, but without the theater department.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So the idea of that political timeline that was creating big social unrest. When I look at today, what's going on today, there's a parallel. In 1969, the Stonewall riots happened in New York in June. In July, the moon landing happened. The Woodstock event happened in August of '69. Then we skipped to May and April of 1970. April was Earth Day week. May was the Kent State shootings. During all of these 2 years, the anti-war movement was creating an upheaval. We weren't sure, should we be going to school when all this is going on?
Wow.
I attended 2 marches in Washington. The idea that we needed to respect our planet was part of this movement, war, and there was a very important saying, war is not healthy for plants and living things, something like this, or living children. So that was like a 60s sort of mentality, and I've sort of held that on to my philosophy when I moved to Pittsburgh. I was very involved with a group called the Architects Workshop. And my forte was creating playgrounds out of, I called it garbage. We called it recycled materials.
It's all about that spin.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, how do you really take a pretty word and clean it up and make it sound like it's green or sustainability or having a new way of defining a movement.
Because this language was all very new, and as we know, it continues to evolve.
Sort of
And it's really all the same thing. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I created 3 playground sculptures for the Arts Festival in 1972, in 1973, and 1974. Part of my business, which is the vintage clothing store Eons that I founded 35 years ago, I have involved artists. I have involved recycling, upcycling, what now is called green slow fashion.
Right.
Back then, to me, it was all just recycled.
Right.
It was respecting what we already have. What can we do with what we have already without destroying the planet and creating a larger carbon footprint?
Right.
When I was approached by Rhonda, all of this fit together. It is part of my DNA of what I want to do.
I love
and
that.
I believe everybody should live their life this way because we have a limited time here to influence positive changes.
That's right. It's not, it's a situation that is very delicate, and we all have to do our part. And speaking on everybody having to do their part, Emilio, you've been involved with Ecolution since the beginning as well, helping with hair and makeup styling. Can you speak to that from your perspective, not only as a business owner, but also as a father, why it's important for you to be involved in climate change activism like this?
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for that. When it comes to just understanding, this whole movement, I know Gino, my partner, and I, naturally our wives, our kids, to your point. I mean, we want to leave the world a better place for our kids in any way we can.
Yeah.
And this is a really great way for us to, begin new habits, if you will. I feel that creating an awareness is really important. I mean, there's many things that even I had to become even more aware of and better at that I realized. And my thought was, and our thought was, if we can help everyone do a little something more by creating this awareness, and if they were doing nothing and started doing something, then that's better than doing nothing. And if they were doing something and they do even more, that's even better as well. And I even come to thinking about some of the many things that growing up, my father was a big repurpose type of guy. Being a first generation American here in America, I mean, he repurposed everything. Everything he could have repurposed,
Sounds like
he repurposed.
my grandparents, yes.
Right? I mean, you were talking about the playground, Richard, and I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, I remember my father coming home with these big, huge satellite dishes. And I'm thinking, what is he going to do? What are we doing with these? And wouldn't you know, next to the bocce court outside
Of course there's a bocce court. I love that.
Guess what he did? He took those big old satellites and they became the roof of the area that you could have with a little refrigerator down there, of course, to keep the wine and then to play cards after you're playing bocce for everybody to sit.
I
so
love
it was
that.
like, so my point is repurpose, reuse. But that's what's so great about the evolution of Ecolution. If you think about where we are, where we were, and how this collaboration of artists, designers, and people all coming together, along with naturally what we do as far as our part of it, is taking these great themes and ideas that Richard and Rhonda and even Deb Doherty, who was a big help as well on that initial day, all of us working together as artists and bringing this through a show or through a presentation that involves people from really all different walks of life. It's really been exciting, and to repurpose, reuse, recycle is really amazing. And I think about some of the stuff and some of the things that the designers came up with. I mean, it's amazing. CD players, record players, the tie dress. I mean, so many.
The blue bags.
The blue bags, which really, think about the awareness of that and how even, the blue bags obviously is iconic with market districts and how they've made some big changes and adaptations to go all paper to help with the environment. So it's amazing how it's evolved, like from year one with the tie dress to this past year with the bag dress.
That's amazing, and I appreciate you both so much for joining me for this segment. And, before we talk more about what goes into an event like this, let's take a look at some of the work from previous years to give everyone an idea about what Ecolution is. Wow, that was just a lot to take in. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, my favorite pieces were always the super unconventional sort of materials that were used. And I just remember, year after year seeing the progress of the designers and how it just gets better and more challenging, that the things that they're doing. It's always incredible to watch. So I wanted to ask, now that we've sort of taken a look back, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of Ecolution. I thought you guys might like that.
Oh, I love it. First of all, we have a wealth of artists and
Yes.
creative people in Pittsburgh.
Big
I
time.
love bringing everybody in for a super show. And when we started this, the idea was to, when I approached Emilio and Rhonda and Deb, I said, let's have this theme. So each year we give artists in their guidelines a theme. The very first year was the 4 seasons.
Okay.
The second year was the 4 elements. Then we went to the planets, forces of nature, and last year it was rebirth. So each artist that I curate will react and create something around that idea and how they can elevate that in their design, which would also include hair design that Emilio will talk about. When I having a very broad range of friends who are artists and designers, I can pull from a nice stock of people who might be available. I also talk to friends at Carnegie Mellon. I talk to friends at Point Park. I talk to friends at Kappa. So age has nothing to do with it. It's all about, are you willing? Do you have the talent? Are you interested in creating something that has a response to Earth Day? Does it talk to you? Does it say something that you want to make a statement? And one of my hashtags is hashtag art equals truth. I always feel that artists have something to say and it will always be honest. And some people are afraid of that, which is good, because as an art community, we have a strong presence in the world. Right now, we're silent for a little while, but we're going to come on much stronger. Every year that I approach my friends who come together as a collaboration, I feel like I've heightened an awareness.
Right.
Part of the idea also, I always, in everything I do, include dance. When I have a moment, I can do bring in friends who do spoken word. One of my favorite artists that I have worked with over the years is Vanessa German. She was an artist that participated in our Forces of Nature, and I always say Vanessa is a force of nature.
She sure is.
Yeah, that's for sure.
She created a spoken word piece during that moment that included her ceramic jewelry that she showcased on 12 of her models. And I asked her, can you give us a prayer for the earth? She did that. She was also one of our incredible designers the first year. Other elements that I like to bring in beyond the 4 elements that I started with.
Well, I like the planets.
Yeah.
You know, the planets, the 1 year with the planets was really cool, Richard. You know, seeing the inspiration of how, you know, the interpretation of different designers. And what I loved about this process was Richard would come up with these amazing little themes, but they were themes that were broad.
They were expansive.
And yes, so it allowed a designer to really expand on their creativity. And then, again, going back to what am I as a designer going to use or repurpose or reuse? How can I, you know, fit within this theme and then bring it all together? And then naturally from there, you know, our designers and makeup artists, you know, Gino and I, we would have them all come together and that day of, like 5 hours before showtime, they would all be at the salon and we would have the whole back of the salon and each designer had their specific area. They would bring their model in and then we would, you know, get the direction from each individual person. So it starts from like the theme to then the designer's interpretation, of course, picking the right models with you know, and having Deb Doherty and her amazing diverse group of people that we could choose from, along with the many photographers that were there to have that collaboration, the spoken word 1 year, another year. So it was like theatrical
Yeah.
dancing.
Well, that's what I've always liked about
music.
it. It's not just a runway show.
No,
right?
This is very like, it's about creating awareness on all different levels.
Yeah.
And the broad and diverse group of people that attended Ecolution
Right.
was really amazing.
Wow. You guys have literally taught me so much, you know, of the evolution of Ecolution. So thank you so much for that. And I hope we can chat a little bit more. So please don't go anywhere. But it is time for our first segment, featuring designer from multiple shows, Bradford Mumpower. Working as a massage therapist since 1999, Bradford brought his understanding of the body when he emerged onto the fashion scene in 2014, showing his first collection at Pittsburgh Fashion Week. Prints and bright colors have been the calling cards of his collections, often using Dutch or African wax prints. Unconventional materials have also been a draw, and fashion design competitions like the Ecolution Fashion Show have fueled his creativity in using materials such as bubble wrap, maps, plumb lines, and even icicles. And we will see the dress made of over 400 Hershey bar wrappers. I remember that one, which was worn by Pennsylvania's contestant in the Miss America pageant in Las Vegas, Nevada. So let's hear from Bradford Mumpower.
So sustainability in the fashion world is a new idea it's difficult to get your hands on. There's not a lot about fashion that's sustainable. And that is actually, for me, the biggest challenge with wanting to work within fashion, is because it is one of the largest polluters of the planet. Probably second to the petrol industry. I mean, fashion is devastating to the planet. And in our Western society, in our fast fashion, has made that exponentially worse. So when I do design clothing that's to be worn, it is important to think about organic fabrics, organic dyeing methods. I'm a big fan of using recycled fabrics, so especially polyesters that have been made from bottles that have been broken down and then extruded into thread and then made into fabrics. I'm a big fan of those. I love these recycled fabrics. Though there are more purists who think that recycled fabrics, the more you wash them, the more they break down, they pollute the planet. So you can try to be very eco-friendly and still not be eco-friendly enough. I know that what I'm looking at currently is actually taking old clothes and repurposing them. Taking them apart, sewing them together, making new seams, making pants into dresses, making shirts into dresses, making multiple shirts into different shirts. So we're actually keeping things out of the landfill, not more dyeing. For me, that's a way of kind of staying eco-friendly. The damage has been done. So this garment's been made, so how can I take these 5 garments from going into a landfill and someone can wear them and it'd be trendy and interesting? There's a big movement, well, not big, I wish it was big. There's a movement for that in a very deconstructed, avant-garde sort of look, and I'm actually wanting to do it in a more tailored, professional look. So it's actually recycled, upcycled clothing that you can wear to work. And there's a niche there, I think. I'm not seeing a lot of that being done. It's very exciting. I've dug into making a few things. I'm actually partnering with another artist to create a line that we're hopefully going to launch in the spring. Richard had invited me to be part of this Ecolution show, and their first email is a little intimidating for a new designer, which I was. I had made one unconventional dress beforehand, and so element. So I wanted to do an element. So there's earth, water, air, fire. I'm clearly not doing fire. I'm not at this point drawn to earth, but I need a material that I can work with. I know that I can work with material-like objects. So I had made trash bag dresses, so bubble wrap is very similar, but if I do bubble wrap, that's going to be the most expected thing. It's so how can you take bubble wrap and present it in a way that surprises the audience, the judges, and makes people remember your dress. And so I decided the best way to do that was to take an air dress, a bubble wrap dress, and turn it into a water element. Fill the little bubbles, and I used large bubble wrap. So fill those bubbles with colored blue water. And 4 or 5 shades. Like I didn't just do like all one color blue. There were multiple shades of blue. And it was a trial and error process. Like I sat in the studio, I sat in my studio here with syringes for my friends who are nurses, with water, squirting it in and trying different sealants to keep the water in. It's all about play. It's about playing with fashion. Art should be fun. The second year was the planets, so I did a dress out of multiple kinds of magnetic tapes, audio cassette tapes, VCR tapes, 8mm tapes, some woven and some fringe, and some sculptural elements with some wire. The third year I was participating was Forces of Nature. That year I decided to choose, I had just gone to Alaska, so I chose glaciers calving glaciers, which is the ice cap melting and falling to the ocean. So I made a dress, top bodice was insulated for the model, because I'm thoughtful that way, with icicles hanging from it. The bottom of the dress was made out of paper maps that were curled into a huge circle dress, a lot of combs, and so on the runway the dress melted and actually disintegrated the maps. So it was very, probably my most political beat you over the head with piece. And then last year was this rebirth. I once again went back to using magnetic tape for this one, all VCR tape. I think it fit the criteria extraordinarily well because my first dress died and I, in the last minute, made a new dress, so that was a rebirth, this dress I made. And then this year's dress, which you'll see next year, will be a rebirth of the dress that died the year before that I will make. I think I've got all the quirks figured out.
Well, that was amazing. You know, he had some incredible designs and sort of these like fantastical moments, but I have to ask you about the icicles, because to me that was just out of this world. Can you explain a little bit what was going on there?
Cool. That was actually real dry ice icicles that he had stored in a container, so obviously they would not melt. She had to wear that in front of a bustier that he built, but knowing how long there is preparation for the model to the runway, about an hour. So she held up very well. Gabrielle was a trooper. I've used her in other shows, so she was an amazing model.
Great model, and was very flexible.
Yeah, to be able to want to do that's a trooper right there. But when you see these designs, Emilio, coming from the hair and makeup perspective, does your mind just go wild thinking about all the things you can do, from like glitter on the lips to like, wild hair? I mean, what does it for you?
Which is exactly what we do.
Yeah.
A great deal of this naturally comes from the designer's perspective. Right. So every great artist that works at least in our field, in our works, our job is to help complement and enhance the theme along with the designer's inspiration and bring it to a next level. But it's also about accenting and complementing, not overpowering.
I love that.
I think what you'll notice with a lot of the hairstyles and designs, our purpose was to help complement and never overpower. And understated, but fitting the elegance or the feeling of whatever that designer was working towards. And that's the sign of really great hair and makeup, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see more of that great hair and makeup as we move forward. So our next featured guest is choreographer and designer Pearlann Porter, who is the founding artistic director of the Pillow Project and the founding director of The Space Upstairs, where she is a full-time resident artist and the regular host and creator of the long-running Second Saturdays Jazz Happenings. She has brought her ideas in dance, improvisation, and site-specific performance with the Pillow Project to Paris, London, Amsterdam, and Dublin. Wow, that's amazing.
That's cool.
Pearlann was named one of Dance Magazine's 25 to Watch in 2010 and is a current 2020 recipient of the Investing in Professional Artists Grant, awarded by the Pittsburgh Foundation, Heinz Endowments, the Opportunity Fund for the creative development of her latest work, blending improvography, that's her word, I'm guessing, and spoken jazz. Pearlann holds a BFA in jazz dance from Point Park University, where she has been on dance faculty for 20 plus years, teaching postmodern jazz and improvisation.
Well, I've helped Richard out with a lot of events because I throw a lot of events myself, so I know what it takes behind the scenes to make a lot of moving parts happen at the same time. So me and my partner John helped him out. We were helped setting up the runway. He'd give me a job. He said, be creative, and I'd go do that. And then when I saw the fashion, it was the first year I had actually attended an Ecolution show, and it wasn't a normal fashion show. It was an art show, and people were wearing the art. I mean, there was a dress made out of ice, and there was all like dresses that were impractical, basically impractical fashion from the fashion standpoint, but from the artistic standpoint, really cool. And that's like, at that show, I made that decision. I said, Richard, I have to be involved in this. I've got this idea. And I didn't even know the idea yet, but I knew I wanted to do something like this for sure. I've always wanted to do something like this. And because I don't sew, I can't do regular fashion, but I'm like, but I could do this, like, because this doesn't need to be real fashion. This could be, a different kind of artistic expression to it. So I wanted to make a wedding dress out of just the white pages, and I called the dress Unlisted. And it was like a corseted top that was made out of teeny tiny strips of paper and ruffles for days. I was able to even get underneath this dress because my model was 6'5". He's a very tall guy. And I said, I want to make this just absolutely in size stunning. So I'm a short person. I picked someone that was as tall as I can get them for this dress. And it took up most of the runway, and it was amazing. But it took, I would say it took a couple weeks to fold all the paper and to glue every piece. And it was this whole operation in my kitchen for weeks of just over and over making these ruffles. And then the day of, I had to find somewhere downtown that I could make it indoors, assemble the whole thing, and carry it by hand to the hotel because it would not fit in a vehicle. So we'd have to rent a truck for it. So it was an event. And then afterwards, we had a big photo shoot downtown. They awarded it one of the top fashions of the evening. Not a stitch on it, all hot glue. The whole dress was hot glue. And afterwards, we took some photo shoots downtown. And I was like, well, we can't keep this. It was already starting to kind of fall apart to begin with. I said, let's destroy it. Like trash it or stash it. And what am I going to do? It's never going to be able to be worn again. So we ran through the fountain with it. I mean, that really kind of like hits on the essence of why Ecolution is something I could get behind as like an art event, because it's the whole idea of this. There's another level of creativity here. Like last year, someone made a dress out of the blue giant eagle bags. And you're taking something that you have this everyday common interaction with, and you're turning it into something elevated, and you're upcycling it into something that it wasn't before. And that to me, like, displays another level of creativity. I think that, because there were some legit fashion designers at that show, and they said this was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, because I can't behave like this with normal materials. I have to think, what can I possibly do with this? Someone had a flapper dress out of VHS tape, and I looked at that and I said, I would legit wear that. That's amazing. And how come I've never thought of that? I've never seen that. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. And there's that level of pushing the artist with unconventional materials. Because a lot of people think, if you want to make great art, you need to have the best materials ever. And I'm a huge proponent of that is not the case. In fact, give me duct tape and popsicle sticks, and I should be able to make something incredible out of that if you have the ingenuity and the creativity and the wherewithal to think so far outside of the box, you create like a different box altogether. And I think seeing artists pushed with not even less materials, but materials they never would have considered otherwise, you're going to create something amazing. So, I mean, I enjoy regular fashion shows, but this one is different because I like to see how people are going to surprise me. There's a lot of lean-in moments. And I talk to people about the lean-in moment being this source of intrigue and that pulls you in. Like, if something's like a wow factor, you lean out. Wow, oh, wow. And like you take it in. But if something is like, what is that made of? And you have this long lean in of like, wait, what? Like, you're not going to see just fabric. You're not seeing just materials that could be fashion. You're being challenged to, well, what is the idea of fashion? Like, what is the idea of something that is wearable? Like, you could go so high couture with it. It's you're just wearing a piece of artwork in a weird way. And I think this is not a regular fashion show where people are looking at trends and they're looking at what the latest designer might have, be making with the spring collection, whatever it is. You're looking at fashion designers or other kind of artists go out of their way to take common everyday items and things you never would even imagine to be a wearable thing, much less a whole outfit or a dress. And you're watching the heightened creativity of these artists push the boundaries of what fashion could be.
Well, she was amazing. I was in love with her energy, and I loved what she was saying about her sort of lean-in moment. And for me, one of my lean-in moments was definitely this blue dress next to Emilio, made out of an uncommon material for a dress, right? But a common material that we see every day. And Richard, can you speak to this a little bit?
Well, this was from last year. Brian David created this. He's a couture designer in Pittsburgh. One of my favorite people who has been very generous with his time. He created this out of 100 Giant Eagle bags. So it's a signature idea of how recycling might not have this material anymore in the future, since they've talked about discontinuing the blue bag in 2025.
That's
which is great. Again, that shows how by doing something, if you're doing nothing and now you're doing something, it's better than doing nothing.
Oh,
right?
I agree with that.
But the other thing that I think is key too is the designers are pushing the limits of making things acceptable. Ecolution has offered that to many people, many designers, to take what's out there and make it acceptable, to use their creativity for wearability, to have it be worn, even if it's just for a day.
I love that. Yes, even just for a day.
Just for a day.
And even Pearlann's work, it's gender fluid. It's not made for a man or woman. There's no definition of a gender. Right. So her model was a male. It was the most fabulous piece I've ever seen. Billy Porter would be thrilled to have worn it.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, Billy would have loved that.
Next is a designer slated for Ecolution 2021, Nisha Blackwell. Nisha is the founder of Knots Land Bow Ties, established in 2014. She downsized from a local coffee shop and decided to brew her own ideas. Spurred by a passion, the world around her, and building an environmentally friendly business, Knots Land became reality. Some of her favorite partners and places to source and rescue high-quality pieces are the Pittsburgh Center for Creative Reuse, Tees Upholstery, Ultra Fabrics, Drape Companies, many other designers, and her Sewist Network and the Pittsburgh Opera. The fabric is truly the first step in creating circular products. Knots Land has grown to a powerhouse upcycling business with goals of expanding and cultivating ecosystems that support people and the environment, all while using items that already exist in the universe and all over the world.
Attending Ecolution was super inspiration in the fact that knowing that there are other people, there are other sustainable designers, it's possible to be a sustainable designer, and it didn't feel like out there. This is before I even really did research into sustainable fashion and circularity. So when I was going, especially in those early years, I didn't really even have a brand yet, but it was inspiring to see other people having garments and pieces made from reclaim and reworking and reimagining materials that already existed. Walking in there felt like being in another city. And I always say, growing up in Pittsburgh, it's very siloed. It's like, you don't really feel that that New York feel per se, or that New Orleans, or that Atlanta even feel. So when I went to that show, I had no idea that this was the first show. I just was excited to see the creativity that was put into it, and this experience of there's this showcase of fashion, but the folks walk directly by you, and like you can see the garments up close and you can experience them. So you experience them when you see them from afar coming down the stairs, but then you start to experience it as the models were walking through the crowd, and that's a whole different experience than, you know, just like looking at it on the runway or you know, looking at it somewhere else. So I started a sustainability journey in my mid-20s, and I remember just I started with going to the co-op and going to Creative Reuse and Construction Junction, and there was a moment where like I was looking for community and looking to like find other people who were interested in sustainability. And so I came across Pittsburgh Earth Day and the events surrounding it, and that's how I got introduced to the fashion show. And I mean, just an experience in its own, for sure. One of the most memorable moments is when the tie dress, I think it really ties into what I do. We make bow ties, and to see the ties be created into, I think it was a vest. I think it was like a bunch of purple ties sewn together. I can't remember if it was a full dress or a vest, but like it was just beautiful, long, and you can tell. The thing I loved about that piece was that you can see the original like ties, right? Like it wasn't reworked or remade. It was like still sort of it was used in its original shape and form. There have been a bunch of beautiful pieces I've seen, but that one was like the one that really I remembered. Purple's my favorite color. I make ties. What we do really in Nosland is we try not to focus so much on gender and like bow ties being for a specific gender, that we hands down have such a huge LGBTQ following and supportings that like we could never even imagine ourselves not being open to everyone. And as a Black woman, I try to make sure that, I mean, you know, everyone is included. And with that, we're hoping to create a piece that is just really blurs that line in a really exciting, new and fun way. I can give a sneak peek that we've been sort of playing around with elements and like what elements look like from a bow tie standpoint. It still will be bow tie centric, but we're like designing it in such a way that is like, I don't know, it's something that we've never done before, and we're really excited to expand outside of like, you know, our sort of like production product consumer usual. And we actually, this also feels like a year in which we've been able to explore that in other ways. We'll be in a show called Locally Sourced at the Carnegie on exhibition. Our bow ties will be on exhibition for a year long, and when they approached us, I was so appreciative because a lot of people don't usually take textiles as like, I mean, unless you're doing something like weaving or something super duper which that's a whole skill in its own, but it feels good to be a textile artist and be taken notice of in the Carnegie.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I am so excited to see what Nisha has in store for 2021.
Well, Nisha is one of our new artists for 2021. Very excited to have her into the family of artists.
Oh, yeah.
She has attended many of our shows and actually attended when Carrie Kramer designed this tie jacket in 2015. It is made out of 40 recycled ties, all color coordinated. Obviously, for my pants. And
I know, we're ready. This is one of my absolute all-time favorite pieces. It's wearable art, right?
Yeah, wearable for
Carrie
sure.
is a local artist. She works with a lot of the national touring companies that come in as a sewer and dresser. She is very dedicated to creating works of art that are wearable, that blends the idea of gender fluidity.
That's amazing.
And you know, also, I'm excited to see what she comes up with as well, because here's someone who it just totally represents what Ecolution was all about from the beginning. Right. Here's an artist now, 6 years later, who attended some of the shows, and now is like wants to do something herself and really take it to the next level. And I'm just so excited to see what happens there.
Oh, it's going to be
amazing. 2021 is
going to be the year. Wow. We're all hoping anyway.
Yes.
And speaking of next up, we are now going to take a look at married couple, both involved in Ecolution. Choreographer Staycee Pearl and sound designer Herman Pearl, also known as DJ Soy Sauce. Stacy is the co-artistic director of Pearl Art Studios and Staycee Pearl Dance Project and Soy Sauce, where she creates artful experiences through dance-centered multimedia works in collaboration with her husband and artistic collaborator, Herman. She received her initial dance training at the Alvin Ailey American Dance Center. In 2010, they debuted at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater and served as resident dance company for the theater for 3 years. They then opened Pearl Art Studios in April of 2012, producing works including On Being, Octavia, and Flowers. Herman Pearl, resident DJ and sound designer for Staycee Pearl Dance Project performances at Ecolution, is the head engineer and owner of Tough Sound Recording, as well as the sound designer and co-founder of Pearl Arts Studios. Through Pearl Arts, Herman creates soundscapes to serve as a component to contemporary dance. His work has been featured in various independent films and documentaries, video games, and advertising. He has designed soundscapes for numerous choreographers and has collaborated with many visual artists to create installations and touring exhibits. Herman has recorded and produced work for a plethora of recording artists across genres and techniques, and has performed, created, and recorded his own music now for over 25 years. Here is Stacy and Herman Pearl.
Whole COVID thing and the political situation right now, I mean, mainly the COVID thing, it's changed everything utterly in terms of the way that we can operate, in terms of the way that I can operate as a recording studio, in terms of the resources that other people have to spend money on art is, you know, it's killed everything. I feel like in a way, like a weird way, we've got a lot to look forward to, and there's a lot of really great things that are building, things that are like a year and a half out, 2 years out. So that's kind of hopeful and encouraging, but it's kind of like we got to hang in there and buckle in, and you know, it's been 6 months of like, you know, pushing through.
He says that, but he's actually like creatively on fire, like more than anyone I've seen. He's spending more time at our apartment and making music than before. Although, I mean, still some of it's happening in the studio. But while I'm like trying to figure out like how I'm going to continue to create and what that's going to look like. And you know, you have to remember that we're artists. We're not going to stop. We have some challenges in front of us, but it's not going to stop us from being who we are. Like, it's not like it's just a job. It's who we are. So, but I get a lot of inspiration from him as he just like, every day he comes home or he comes into the bedroom and says, "Oh my God, I just did this amazing thing." I'm like, whatever. But actually I'm saying, oh my God, this is so cool that he's done this amazing thing, you know?
It's funny because anytime I listen to interviews with podcasts or interviews with couples that are in the business together, whether it's like a screenwriter and an actor or, you know, dance, like this is kind of a classic combo is dance and sound. Mm-hmm. We know a few other, you know, couples, like long-term couples that both do that, or they're both dancers, and you have to watch it. Like, everybody always has a story about one spouse like that, like places a limit on like when you can discuss, not after 10 p.m. no business, or no business in this room. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a sanctuary.
Gotta compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all business all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta like shut that off sometimes, because that's the thing. We're not just artists. We're administrators and hustlers, and you know, getting the money and all that kind of stuff.
So Pearl Arts is where the magic happens, in here. Pearl Arts is in here, yes. But so I guess first and foremost, Pearl Arts is the two of us, and then it's also our collaborating artists, who we love and work with all the time, and then it's also this space which we share with the community. So we have classes here, we have workshops here, we have events here. People have rented from us to have weddings and art openings, all kinds of things. And I think what we strive to do is just being as inclusive as possible. and then also share creativity with our community. So it's not just us on stage showing everyone what we do, it's also helping people understand how they are also creative within themselves. So when I think of saving the planet or making movement that represents the world and where we are, I think of cyclical movement. I think of a continuous movement, because I feel like all these things have happened before, they'll happen again. It's just a different time and a different space. And hopefully this cycle is spiraling upward, or if there were a direction. So when I think of making the movement, that's what I think of.
I think it's very important that they both brought up COVID, because obviously this moment is a real marker in our history. Would you like to speak a little bit to how COVID has impacted not only Ecolution, but just everything in our worlds in general?
Well, I work a lot with the dance community in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Many of the companies are redefining what dance is all about and how it is staged, performed for the public. A big concern is when we can all get together for live performances again. I have worked with Texture Contemporary Ballet, who has performed at Ecolution and Stacey Pearl Dance Project also. So this is a defining moment for creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Emilio, how's it impacted your work?
Well, I tell you, it comes down to really safety protocols and all of those various things that we all have learned about more frequently now than ever. But I think it's staying diligent and staying very true to that. Now, then, how do we get creative within that, those realms? You know, here we go and we try to break the walls and go outside of the spectrum, but now we have to stay inside a certain spectrum and figure out how to expand and still get the messages across with the creativity and the all the various forms of dance and really the art that we do, and all the various aspects of means of how we express ourselves. So I agree with you. This is definitely a defining moment for all of us and how we can come together. But that's the most important thing. We're all in this together, and there's nothing we cannot do without the working together. There's nothing we can't do working together, and doing it from a give to live and live to give mindset. So I really believe that, and the artist community is always the best at coming together when it comes to that.
They're a reflection of that, so we're sort of physically separate, but creatively connected.
Yes, I love that.
See, I got mine in.
I love that.
That's right. Now let's hear from one of the judges, Jessica Beck. Jessica is the Milton Fine Curator of Art at the Andy Warhol Museum. She was our judge for last year's Ecolution show themed Rebirth. She curated the Ad Man, Warhol Before Pop, at the museum, where she asked us how she could create one night in 1960s fashion experience during the run of the exhibit. Here's Jessica Beck.
Good thing about the judging experience for this particular event for me was that I knew the other judges well, and I'm quite friendly with them. So Gavin Benjamin is a good friend and a local artist, and Diane Samuels is an amazing figure in Pittsburgh. One of the co-directors or previous co-directors and founders of the City of Asylum. And so it was a really fun experience. And I think Diane actually kept track of all of our numbers, added all of them up for us. But I remember not having too much back and forth, that we really came together as a team pretty quickly and kind of all agreed pretty quickly. And I think because the pieces that did win had such an impact and really stood out from the others. And there were a lot of really creative pieces that night. And I was impressed generally with the caliber across the board. So it was a hard decision in the end, from what I remember. Only because I think once we got past the top two prizes, it was like the playing field was a little more even with the caliber of pieces. So yeah, I remember having a lot of fun and laughing and being surprised by the talent and coming to a pretty quick agreement together. Yeah. But I remember we were all going with what was the most impactful. We all ended up responding in a way that we thought about what was most memorable or impactful on the actual runway, because that's the whole experience with fashion, right? Especially this kind of fashion show, that it's not necessarily supposed to be streetwear, but it's supposed to be about a moment, a performance, a visual experience. So yeah, I think we ended up picking the works that seemed most creative with the materials, and the construction element as well. It was definitely part of the judging criteria, and how it wore on the runway. So I would say it was a mix of sort of creative experimental fashion shows. So it's sort of a mix of performance art, dance, drag, fashion, art, and also because everyone was using sort of non-traditional materials, recycled materials, that sort of pushes it already into a zone of experimentation or creative experimentation that would kind of border on art or sculpture in some cases of some of the dresses, because I can't imagine that some of them were that comfortable to wear, but they looked really amazing. I think what happens actually in this event is you can be a really great artist, but then sort of something misses in the complete piece. So there was actually a really interesting reveal of how you have to both understand how to push the envelope creatively, but then also how to come up with a garment that could be worn on a body well. And so I think it was that combination of something that came out. I feel like I remember definitely a final moment at the end of a dress from telephone books. And there was an element to that piece that wore very well, even though it was this sort of untraditional material. And there was also a piece of blue recycle bags or giant eagle bags of some kind, I remember, that again wore very well. And so some of the pieces that got lost didn't necessarily fit the body as well, or didn't have as much movement maybe, or didn't present on the runway as well. So I think that's part of the whole thing, is that the experience of seeing it walk on a figure down the runway, as opposed to seeing it hanging maybe as a sculpture in a way, is sort of the difference that happens in the runway show.
Well, I've had the pleasure of being a judge for Ecolution, and it's always been really fun to get to do that. So how do you go about picking the judges?
Well, I'm very connected to the arts community. So each year it is a judged event. So I pull judges from art museums, fashion industry, critics, a lot of people from the nonprofit sector. They come in and they give us a evening of opinions.
Yeah, literally.
Very intelligent opinions, right? And I really appreciate both of you being a part of this experience here, the Ecolution Rewind. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
That is a great question. I didn't expect that question, sorry.
Again, the inspiration that is created through the original Ecolution fashion show and how it's transcended and evolved, the evolution of Ecolution, it's amazing as that we get into this next decade, what 2021 will be, and really the rest of that decade. And I look forward to Ecolution evolving in who knows how many other ways at this point in time. And so with that, that's where I feel.
And I do feel that science and art will cure us.
Oh,
nice.
If I had an applause track right now.
That's right. That's a good one.
I agree. Science and
art will cure us.
That's right.
That's great.
Well, thank you again both so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of Pittsburgh Earth Day's Ecolution Rewind. We hope you enjoyed revisiting these previous events, and we look forward to seeing you at Ecolution 2021 in April. I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and from Richard, Emilio, and everyone at Pittsburgh Earth Day, have a good night. And we'd like to leave you with these final moments with Vanessa German, poet, performer, photographer, and sculptor. Vanessa German creates works that explore the power of transformation and healing. She scours her Pittsburgh neighborhood searching for objects to incorporate into her art. I surrender myself to the objects that call up to me, she has said. This intricate mixed media sculpture combines acrylic, coins, bottle caps, rhinestones, and glitter. With these three-dimensional collages, German reclaims objects and words that symbolize the oppression of African Americans for generations, creating serene, if surreal, figures. She created one of the award-winning works for the first Ecolution event in 2015, themed The Four Seasons, and performed a spoken word monologue to showcase her ceramic wearable art in 2018.
Ecolution is a big part of my life in the ways that I move as an earthling, as a human being on a planet that never wastes, and as a human being who makes things with other things. I have come into my own evolution into what it is to be a part of a living ecosystem. So being invited and welcomed to create inside of that deep purpose of ecological evolution, recognition of evolution of the ecosystem that we're in, and how that ecosystem is being changed by the ways that we honor and do not honor everything that keeps us alive. I've had, it's always been a challenge, the work that I've created for the fashion shows, because I am doing more than one thing. I'm creating a garment that is also a power figure that utilizes so many different textures and different ingredients inside of the way I always work, not just as a task for using, creating wearable art out of things that would be considered detritus, things that were our cast off relic, our trash. The earth never made trash. The earth doesn't make trash. And so that's a big part of my practice. And so it's been a challenge to really do that distinctly and for the body, but a challenge that is filled with love and filled with the power of creativity to inspire and to give life to the hearts and to the human beings who connect with the mission of Ecolution and who are connecting with their own evolution as earthlings in this ecosystem. It's been a joy.